As always, guys, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Also, hit that bell to be notified for future videos. Hello, and welcome back to the fish tank. I am Cole. Today, as you see here, we have an AAR Cuda. But today, we are going to turn it into a custom Gasland themed build. I hope you enjoy. Guys, this is what we're starting with. A pretty beat up, worn and play worn AAR Cuda. We are Cuda's Diecast Customs, so I thought it would be appropriate to do another Cuda. Our first one wasn't the best, but I think this one is better. So as always, guys, we are starting with our drill, and we're drilling out our rivets. Today's idea, I honestly, this build came out of the blue. I planned on doing a GasLands build at the end of February, and this is where I am at with it. I wanted to take this AAR Cuda just because it looked beat up. It looked like it was sitting in a field. Today we are gonna make it to life. Bring it back to life. Bring it to the life that it deserves. Because right now, she is sad. And I want to make her happy again. She might not be pretty, but she is strong. That's what's important for this build. Once we do get this car pried apart, it took a minute, we look at it, it's filthy. Those axles are rusted. Pretty much rotten, if I have to say so myself. Look at all that dirt also, guys. Just look at it. The windshield was covered in sand and dirt. It looks like this car was underground. I wouldn't be surprised if it was. There's our casting again. Looking very cool. Now. And here's our glass. Very filthy, very filthy. Our interior as well. It's just covered in dirt. Like I said, I think this car was underground. Now, let's move on to our soapy water. What we're going to do here is we are going to throw in our glass, and we're going to throw in our interior. We're going to give them a scrub in the hot soapy water. Just because, obviously, they need it. It's nasty. So you grab your toothbrush. This is my toothbrush. This is the toothbrush I scrub everything with, even my teeth. I like having the taste of dirt and what else? Paint residue and paint stripper in my mouth. So this is the toothbrush I like to use. Guys, I'm completely kidding. By the way, I don't do that. That's disgusting. But what we're doing here is you're letting it sit, and you scrub it as best as possible to clean it and try to bring it back to the former glory, as clean as it will get. This glass did not recover too well, but the interior did. A little dirt sitting in the bottom, but it's a freaking GasLands build. You don't need to be 100%. Finish cleaning everything up. What we are going to move on to is we are going to fit this engine from this bone shaker. If you guys remember, I'm still siphoning pieces from this bone shaker because I want to use the body for something later down the road. But what I'm doing here is I'm going to snip the motor, and we're going to take the motor and we're going to shove it in this AAR Cuda. Or at least that's my plan. Well, thinking about it, it is my plan because that's what we did today. So once it is snipped and apart from the bone shaker interior, we do get this the dashboard off eventually, but I do that off camera. A lot of stuff was done off camera this build, but a majority of what you see here is the stuff I did get filmed. There was a lot of stuff I had to focus on and look up close. I might have young eyes, but I have the eyes of an old person, believe it or not. After we put our bone shaker aside, we grab our tape because we're going to have to do some damage to this AAR Cuda. We're going to have to put some holes in this hood. You Mopar enthusiasts out there, don't come hating at me. This car was already beat up, so it didn't really matter. And plus, I have plenty other nice ones of this exact casting. So don't kill me. What I like to do is when I cut out holes, I like to line it with tape just so I know like the general area what I want a hole. This whole area that we have here for the hole was actually like perfect. The area that I marked out, it was 100% perfect. So what I do is I grab the smallest drill bit I have, and then I grab, well, first here I'm obviously filing it smooth because there was a bit of a hump, and then after that I grab the smallest drill bit I have, and then I grab my jeweler saw, and we cut and sand an okay hole. Remember, it's a GasLands build, it doesn't have to be perfect. So this is what it turned out to be. As you can see here, I did a little cutting out on the front fenders, and it is poking out of the hood. I think it looks cool. Now, since that is all done, we're going to work on showing you here what I did. There's a little edits here and there, and my plan is to put these monster truck tires on it. So what I am moving on to, I'm sorry I got a little sidetracked here, is we are going to start weathering. So what I did was I put some chrome pen on some areas that I thought would need it, you know, like the front headlights, well, the fog lights, the hood clamps, and then the door handles. But you guys are going to get pretty mad at me here because in a couple minutes I'm about to freaking cover this thing with rust powder, and it's just going to be insane. So the rust powder I start with is, as always guys, if you haven't watched my videos by now and understand them, I like to use two types of rust palettes here. I'm using the dirt sand and wet sand. I like to always start with the wet sand and cover the car up with that just to make it look dirty, like it was sitting in like a field that was covered in mud. And then once we do finish that up, we do move on to the sand. So sit back, enjoy. I do a lot here, so there's a lot of footage that you guys can enjoy. If you guys haven't already, I would go get a drink, maybe some food, because this video is a bit longer than normal. I just thought it was right to show enough of the process I do for this build. It's like I've said multiple times, for these kind of builds, it's completely up to you. No one's gonna judge you for how these type of like rusty, dirty builds turn out, because it's how you vision it. It's what you think it looks like. So what we moved on to was the sand. I just wanted a bit lighter to put some contrast and in the dirt, just so it looks like it dried in some places. And then eventually we do move on to some rust powder. As I always do, guys, I look up pictures online of what a rusty AAR Cuda would look like, and that's how I determine where I put my rust. So majority of the time, these cars, they rust on the hood and then the front. The front bumpers always go, and then the rear quarter panels go too. Also with the roof, and then the rear trunk lid, like the top of it, where the seal is, because water gets in there and it sits and then it rusts. So that's where I determined to put paint. Also, I liked this car how it was, and I didn't strip the paint because it was already like stripped in many spots where I could put rust powder and different powders. So the effect really worked in my advantage this time around, and I'm very happy with the final results. I have no complaints at all. It took me, I think this footage is times 8 because it was so long. I think this took me about a half hour to almost 45 minutes. I did edit a little bit of it out, but majority of it is here, and it turned out awesome. After we did finish this here, guys, we did clear coat it in a matte, I said it's matte, not glossy, so don't come at me, clear coat, and it just made it look subtle and faded like it should. I've been told a couple times that I need to have a matte finish, not a glossy finish, to these type of builds. So that's what I did. I invested a little bit and I got the right clear coat. Again, don't come at me. Eventually we do the tail lights, the headlights, and the grill, but I do that off camera. Well, not the tail lights. I'll show you that in a minute here, but we do everything else off camera, and then we cleared it with matte again. Once we do that, we're going to move on to our custom chassis. I'll see you there in a minute. Hey guys, this is what we're going to do for our custom chassis. I have these monster truck tires. So what you got to do is you got to lift this car. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to smooth the bottom of our plastic base, because we're going to use this still in our build, and make it pretty much smooth so you have a good area, so you can have that big metal bar that you see in your top left corner, so it can sit properly, so there's no struggles. So what I'm doing here is I'm sanding it down as smooth as I can get it with our big file. I've started to do this a little bit on builds when I need to have a smooth surface, so this turned out pretty good as I need it. What I do next is I'm going to do some mock-up and some measurements on where I'm going to want the new chassis that I'm making. I had this big bar sitting in my extra scraps pile, so I was like, this is perfect. And it's a little out of size, so like out of scale, but honestly, it doesn't matter. It still looks cool. And I found out that this was perfect enough that it was almost half. So I grabbed my drill saw and cut away. After we cut, this is what we got, and then we move on to our file and we smooth down that edge that we end up cutting, because you need it smooth. It's a bit jagged. If you use a jeweler saw correctly, normally it's not, but I'm still learning how to use it, so it wasn't perfect. As you see there, it's a bit long, but we do end up trimming that, and it is close enough to where it's reasonable. Now we're going to make our new axle tubes. So what I do is I mark it up on our plastic chassis, and I grab some tubing. We're using a bit thicker tubing, but it did the job because it fit the axle that I needed. So all we did was we measured it, then we grabbed our X-Acto knife and did our spinning. Once it was enough, it broke free, and then we did the exact same process. See here, guys, it's the first time I've ever had axle tubes be the exact same. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to mock it up where I'm going to want it on our plastic chassis, and then I'm going to glue down our first axle tube. Everything was glued, trimmed. We ended up painting it with our hammered paint, and it turned out great. I loved how the chassis turned out. It really works with the build, and we're just doing some mock-up here just to make sure it fits still. What we're going to move on to next is making our rear axles for our Cuda. I did make pre-axles that did work actually, and I didn't realize it. So these are off an old monster truck, and they broke off, but I was able to make them work because they still had a bit of the original hole where they had the original axles, so that was pretty cool. All I did was I grabbed my axle that I was using, smothered it in glue, shoved it in the hole, and made sure she was straight. That sounded very sexual, but let's move on. After we do glue that, we put it to the side, and then, guys, what I decided to do was I'm going to move on to the front axle, and we're going to do the exact same thing. So my plan for the rear wheels was I decided to, as there was 4, I decided to make them like a dually in a sense, and I glued them together. It looks pretty sweet and it's pretty wild. You're gonna have to wait until the end result to see it, but it was just like, whoa. I honestly do not know how to explain it. It's pretty hard to explain. But what we're doing here for our front wheels is we're trying to figure out what kind of axle I'm going to use. So what I do is I grab this I think it's a small screwdriver, but it works and it cuts through plastic, so I always use it. So that's what I'm doing here for the front wheels. But then that wasn't big enough for the axle size that I had, so I ended up grabbing my drill bit that I used to drill out cars, and it made a perfect hole. So with that perfect hole, I put a bit of steel tubing in there. It fit in the hole, and then I glued that to the front. Once I glued that, I was able to determine where the axle was going to stop. So I then glued in that, and then we decided where everything would look. And we did that off camera too. Moving on to next is our interior. So if you guys were wondering how I'm going to do this I'm going to do some measurements on where the end of the original interior goes, and we're going to make some cuts. I do not glue this together because I want to just glue the engine to the top of the casting, just because it would make it a little easier. So what I'm doing here is I grabbed my Sharpie, and we're making our lines just to determine on where we're going to cut. And then once we determine on where we're going to cut, we grab our snippers and we snipper away. The only problem I had with this was I didn't realize that the dash came apart, so I kind of took that apart. But we decided to just on camera here, we glued it and we fixed it, so it does still have a dash and it still has a steering wheel. So don't you worry. We grab our glue as ever, mask it up and mark it as best as possible, and we just plop it right on, and it glued pretty much instantly. I still don't understand why Gorilla Glue dries so fast on plastic. Weird. After we work on our interior, we do have to work on our glass. So this video is kind of sped up a lot. So what I did was I started by cutting out a hole where we put the new engine, but the engine was still interfering. So we had to just take off the whole front panel that you see there of the glass. So my plan is, what I want to do is pretty much just, after I clear that, we are going to just glue the top of the glass on the casting, just to make it a little easier and just so it looks right. Guys, once we finish that up, we're gonna go over to our final assembly. I'll see you over there in a moment. It has come to my attention we have a new builder to the YouTube community, Ghetto Luxury Customs. He's a new YouTuber, he only has 7 subscribers right now, and I wanted to give him a quick shout out because this is what people did for me when I was first starting, and I thought it would be nice to help him out. So guys, make sure to go check out his videos, well, his video, but he has another one coming soon. He seems like a really nice guy, and he does some amazing work. His link will be in the description of this video. Make sure to go check him out. Guys, let's go to our final assembly. I'll see you there. Welcome back to our final assembly. So what we're going to start off with is our custom chassis. Got our 4 big fat tires in the back and our regular set in the front. Looking very cool. Next we're going to move on to our interior. If you remember, we had to glue the dash back on to the rest of the interior because we chopped off the important connector piece. Next we're going to look at is our really faded glass. It is dry rotted. Seriously, it is. If you touch it or push any pressure on it, it will crack. Next we're going to move on to our motor. Looking very dirty and very crusty. Very cool. Next we're going to show you the original chassis that we had for this car. We did some trimming so we could fit those fat exhausts in there. Awesome edit that we made there. Very simple, very cool. And finally, we're going to move on to our casting at play. It looked awesome. The weathering pattern, we did an awesome job on it. The clear coat that we put on it really made it pop. The front end looking awesome. Rear tail lights looking cool. And overall, it's cool. Let's go see what we started with. So guys, this is what we started with. If you remember correctly, it was already pretty crusty, but we made her more crusty and more alive than ever. Let's go see our final results. Here is our final results. Here is our AAR Cuda GasLands themed custom. I think it turned out amazing. I love how it looks. It's probably one of my favorite GasLands builds. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to like, subscribe, and follow for more videos. Guys, stay after. There is a couple of build updates. I will see you in the next one. Bye, guys. Just as a reminder, if you're in the Massachusetts area and you're a hobbyist, make sure to go check out our good friend Mike Gordon and Kim Miller over at Turn 4 Hobbytown. We make your free time awesome!